MLS Aces Podcast, episode 241. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. I am joined this week by a co-host of a guest that I had just a few weeks ago, Nathan Hale. His name is Steve Buckeridge. Steve, you are the co-host of the You Ain't Lying podcast, obviously one of the best, well-known FC Cincinnati podcasts out there. So thank you for hopping on and talking with me tonight.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for inviting me, and congratulations, 241 episodes. That's fantastic, buddy.
It seems like I've done like 30 and I still don't know like what I'm doing. So 241 is just a number at this point in my brain. I don't know.
No, but we appreciate everything you've been doing. Obviously, You Ain't Lying. We started as part of the MLS Aces greater group. So we just appreciate that kickstart and all the support you've provided us, over the years. And just happy to be on tonight and talk a little MLS action here, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm glad to have you on, and I want to kind of start things off by giving you the opportunity. Obviously, for the Cincinnati fans who are listening to this, you guys know You Ain't Lying. For maybe the little bit of people who listen to and follow other teams' podcasts, you know what You Ain't Lying is. But for those who don't know, Steve, can you talk about yourself a little bit and talk about the podcast?
Sure. Yeah. Just a little bit background on myself. Grew up in the East Coast like you. I'm more of a DC metro area guy. Lived overseas for a number of years. I've been involved in soccer for 50 years playing. Obviously living in Europe, really became a super fan. And so moved to Cincinnati about 20 years ago and really just ecstatic that we had, FC Cincinnati start up as a USL team and do so well. And then we got the MLS invite. So I used to cover the team as part of Orange and Blue Press during the USL days, and as we entered into MLS, and that Orange and Blue Press took a hiatus, and then I joined Travis and Nate over at You Ain't Lying about 2 years ago. And You Ain't Lying, we're a fan-based podcast, have a great community, great Slack channel, a lot of interaction with the folks, but really just, we like to call it a fan-based podcast that a lot of, really, soccer nerds, I would say. A lot of people that focus on soccer and tracking every moment, right? We track every rumor, every draft pick, whatever it may be, like today's SuperDraft pick. So, it's been a great ride for us. We've really enjoyed it.
If there is one thing that I'm going to say the total You Ain't Lying podcast and the fan base that you guys have around you, if I've learned about the supporters of FC Cincinnati, you guys are a passionate one. You guys will go 100% even into the absolute worst player, worst signing. Will give it your all, and I absolutely love the passion from you guys. And obviously, You Ain't Lying. What you guys do, just covering the team, I think it's just good for the sport in general, good for the team, good for everyone. So, Steve, awesome. I love having you on. I'm loving already the vibe that we got. So let's dive into some MLS news. It's been a crazy week of MLS signings. I know last week was a little bit of maybe more of a negative episode. We obviously talked about the passing of Grant Wall. We talked about the news going on around the NWSL reports and findings and everything like that. And obviously Triple G versus Gio Reyna. But this week, maybe a little bit more of a tame week. We're going to talk some MLS moves.
I'm glad you got me on this week, buddy. a lot of heavy topics there. Yeah.
I do want to actually ask you, not about, you can talk about Triple G versus Gio if you want, but obviously, a World Cup year is not a normal year. It's not every single year you get a World Cup. What's your thoughts, I guess, on the USMNT's overall performance? If you want to talk about any type of controversy, you can, but if you want to go positive, I'm always about positivity. So you can go whatever direction.
Absolutely, and people can look at some of my tweets and some of my deeper comments, I guess. But overall, it's obviously having the World Cup. Thanksgiving pre-Christmas time is different. We saw that in some of the impact to people being healthy or not. You're not having Weston McKennie 100% healthy, right? He could only go 60 minutes or so per game. Della Torre coming in, he obviously wasn't healthy enough to give minutes. The whole Gio Reyna, was he fit, not fit? Then it came out that it was more of maybe him just not caring for comments that that Greg made prior to the World Cup starting. So overall, I would say we were expected as a pot B or pot 2 seed to get into the round of 16. It It's not easy to do that, as we know. So that was a success that we did get into the round of 16. We did not look very sharp, very good against the Netherlands in that match. I think we got outcoached. In that match, Van Gaal did a very nice job of kind of rope-a-dope, I would say, and kind of letting us take some of the possession and then hitting us on the counter. I would say the guys were really just mentally and physically exhausted in that round of 16 match, and that comes back to, you can question whether Berhalter didn't sub out enough folks in the group play, but you also have to get out of the group play, right? So it's you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Because you got to get it out of the group, and so he played who he thought he's going to play to make that happen. So, I'm kind of one of the guys that believes that a second cycle gets kind of stale for certain managers. I think Greg did his job. He got us to the second round. I don't agree with all of his roster moves, roster selections, substitution patterns, yada, 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 like many people have said.
Yeah.
And then obviously with the further controversy or further, I guess, details of the Gio Reyna discussion and things going on, I think it's probably a good time and the right time to part ways and start afresh. Whether that's going to be a U.S.-based coach, like a Jim Curtin or Jesse Marsh or somebody like that, or if it's going to be an international player. But I think U.S. Soccer, Soccer House in Chicago, I'd like them to make that decision fairly quickly, right? Because we got January camp coming up, and even though this January camp will likely be a kind of you and I have gone back on Twitter, probably going to be more of a U20 preparation for their World Cup right over in Indonesia in May. But you also want to kind of set the vision, set the tone, set who's going to be the leadership, coming into that January camp. And so if U.S. Soccer is thinking of making a move, even if that new coach is not selected before January, I think it would go a long way to make that decision that Greg is either returning or not returning. They need to do that in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
I mean, I very rarely have a guest come on where I agree with like 99% of what they say, but I agree with you overall about the World Cup, overall about the Greg situation. I was one initially where I was okay with Greg coming back for a second cycle. I do think for me, the decisions that were made during the whole Gio controversy, kind of pushed me into the camp of like, okay, like maybe one cycle was fine. Like you said, Greg did his job overall. He won us 2 titles. We got out of the group. We got some younger players playing into the cycle and everything like that. So I agree with you there. I do hope they announce very soon, because I would like to see January, some younger guys, get an opportunity with the men's full first team and get some friendly opportunities. Maybe even guys who are a little bit older, but we could potentially see on the border of being factors for the USMNT, maybe like an Eric Williamson, someone like that. But, US is, I think we're in a decent spot. We just have to kind of continue pushing what we've already created, what Greg has already created, what these guys on the team have already created over the last few years. So I think we're in a good spot. We just gotta keep going. And I think hopefully 2026, we can get past the round of 16 stage.
Yeah, absolutely. At home, that's got to be the expectation. We got to get to those quarterfinals. But you know what? The thing he did do well, right? So we start this cycle better position than we did last cycle, right? Yeah. So that's a positive. Those FIFA rankings that just came out were now higher, ranked higher than Mexico, because we beat them twice and got to the round of 16. So we're 13th and Mexico's behind us. Yeah. And he did grow the player pool, right? He did grow, as you mentioned, got some younger folks involved throughout the Gold Cup in the Nations League. He had 45 to 50 guys he was bringing in versus just the 25 to 35, right? Yeah. So that's important, right?
Exactly, right. And we're developing more players every single day, and obviously Major League Soccer is popping off. So let's dive into Major League Soccer. Let's talk about some things that happened. Yeah. I want to start off with maybe the oldest move on this list that I have right now. Oldest as in the last week and a half has been absolutely crazy. But Matt Hedges, right? Lifer with FC Dallas. It's going to be weird to see this guy in anything other than an FC Dallas jersey.
Absolutely, yeah.
Moving on. He's not going to Cincinnati. Sorry, Steve, but headed up north to Toronto FC, signing on a free agent deal. Like I said, he's a lifer with FC Dallas, 149 career games, all for Dallas, 25 goals and 6 career assists. He's a Supporter Shield winner with them, Open Cup winner with them, 2 times best 11 player with them, 1-time Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time All-Star. He also has 5 caps with the U.S. men's national team as well, which is shocking. I feel like, I don't know, someone of his caliber, at least cracked double digits in my brain, but he didn't.
That surprised me too. I felt like at least a dozen times.
Right? I don't know. Yeah. Like, he was always, to me, the best American center back for a very long time in Major League Soccer, and 5 caps, weird. He did win a Gold Cup with the U.S., so that's a trophy. But I guess your overall opinion of Matt Hedges going up, leaving Dallas, and then heading to Toronto.
Yeah, I've been a Matt Hedges fan for a decade, right? As you mentioned, he's been a stalwart. He's been Mr. Dallas, Mr. Frisco, however you want to say it, for that team, and he's just been the rock solid guy you depend on. Yeah. And so it's obviously seeing him in a different kit is going to be surprising. Toronto were after him. Obviously, there was the big picture of him at TQL here in Cincinnati on the video board and welcoming him. So all the fans got excited that maybe he was coming here. Rumors that maybe San Jose was looking at him because of the Lucci Gonzalez connection there.
Yeah.
There was a picture that came out during his visit to Toronto. He was at the hockey game. I don't know if you saw that picture, but his wife.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was a Raptors game or if it was a Maple Leafs game.
I thought it was a Maple Leafs game. It could be wrong. I thought it could have been a Raptors game, but they were at a sporting event. She looked pretty darn happy that night. And, I did say to folks, I said, I think he's going to Toronto after that. Just, again, happy wife, right? Happy life. She looked pretty happy. So, I think what happened is Toronto gave him the best deal that he wanted, right? He still sees himself as, a 2,000 minute plus starter.
Yeah.
He wants to be that solid piece, that stalwart, like I mentioned, on the back line. He was making $900,000 last year for FC Dallas. Obviously, FC Dallas didn't think that he was worth that much going forward.
Yeah.
And I don't think Cincinnati offered him anywhere close to that. So I guess Toronto probably did the best deal for him and guaranteeing him, hey, you are center back 1 or center back 2. You're going to get the minutes. You're going to help our young guys grow. And, oh, by the way, we got you as close to that he's a TAM signing, right? So we know he's going to be over $750,000 at least, probably. And I don't think Chris Albright here in Cincinnati probably offered that. Who we want is your boy Callens. That's who we want.
I mean, I think the rest of Major League Soccer wants him too. He was. Side note about Alexander Callens, he was the best free agent I think out there, and I think apparently NYCFC have the best track at re-signing him or signing him, period. But we'll see, right? It's free agency. We don't know how this thing's going to go down. But in regards to Matt Hedges, people are saying he kind of took a step back last year and over the last 2 years. I can agree with that. I think obviously, as he's getting older, he's not the same 28, 29, 30-year-old center back that he was. And that's any player, right? But Matt Hedges was still a starting center back on a defense that I think was top 5 in Major League Soccer last year in terms of goals allowed. I know him and Jose Martinez were a very good pairing, and Jose Martinez logged a lot of minutes as well. But Hedges was playing fairly well. And I think when you compare him to many other center back play in Major League Soccer, above average by far, I think, as well. So I think he's an immediate upgrade for TFC, especially for a team that was dredging goals last year. Obviously, we saw a decline of Chris Mavinga. We saw Lucas McNaughton coming from the Canadian Premier League. Maybe another season of him kind of getting adjusted to Major League Soccer. He could be a good pairing. Shane O'Neill as another center back up there. No one that really kind of spikes the meter to me in terms of uber talented guys or guys that are going to stand out to you. At least I think Matt Hedges kind of brings that a little bit, but he also brings to me a sense of Toronto's in win now with underneath Bob Bradley, right? Insigne, Bernadeschi, they're in win now mode. I think Matt Hedges isn't kind of messing around, right? He's looking to win an MLS Cup in the next few years, and obviously he saw that best fit with Toronto FC. And I think, right, if they pull a few more decent moves, TFC could be where I think people were projecting them the second half of the year last year.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And having a preseason with all those guys, right? That's important. And I think the Bob Bradley connection, I think, is
Yes.
a very strong pairing. Having Matt go up there because Bob will lean on him like he does on Michael and other senior leadership. He's a well-seasoned guy, right? He knows the MLS. They know what they're going to get from him. And you're right. That was kind of one of the things that was lacking. You could see in the second half of the season, they were making those positive momentum switches and bringing in the talent they did, but the defense was just lacking. It was giving up too many and too easy goals.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was really hurting them. And so this does solidify, I think, that back line, and I think it probably gives them, I don't know if you look at it just off the top, I think it's bumps them up at least, maybe several wins just having him back there out of the gate. And so we'll see how much that does with the others, but I think it's a key leadership and well-seasoned MLS guy that working with Bob Bradley will be a good fit for them.
Exactly. And I've said it on Twitter before, like this along with the Jonathan Osorio return doesn't make Toronto FC an MLS Cup contender in my eyes, but it puts them on the right path. Bob Bradley needs to continue what he's doing. And I think this is steps towards it, right? This is steps towards Toronto going back to where they were just a few years ago, competing for MLS Cup every single year.
The other thing, Tom, just real quick, he's still a really good passer. At times he can spray the ball pretty well back there, and I think that works well with some of the talent, right, that Toronto's got up in the attacking force. So it'd be interesting to see, how they play their back line this coming season, but he still has got decent passing.
No, you're 100% right. Like, look what Domenico Crescito brought to TFC last year. That dude was pinging balls from the back line, like all across the field to the attackers of Toronto FC. So if Matt Hedges can, just bring a little bit of his passing ability and get it to the right playmakers and the right attackers up front or in the midfield or whatever it may be, I think Toronto could be a lot of fun. And they also have a lot of young talent, a lot of their academy kids coming up, a lot of their, homegrown kids coming up. Like, this is a prime time where I feel like Toronto could take a big step forward. But again, to me, still a few holes from being top of the East, but I think a very good team nonetheless at this point. I guess let's stick with the Eastern Conference. Let's stick with my team, or let's go to my team. New York City FC. The only official move that I'll say right now, because is official, is that so far we've only lost one player.
That's official. That's official.
Yeah, okay. There's some rumors we're floating out there about Maxi and Santi, but NYCFC have loaned defensive midfielder Nicolas Acevedo to Brazil's EC Bahia. Acevedo, if you guys don't know, he was a starting D mid for the MLS Cup team, the Campeones Cup winning teams. 118 career games. He has 5 caps for Uruguay's U23 side. A very talented young player in his own right. I'll just kind of give my NYCFC opinion on this. I'm upset by it. I'm especially upset because if we lose other pieces, like I said about Santi and Maxi, apparently around the corner that we're going to lose them, but. I understand from what people have been telling me in conversations that I've had is that City Football Group want all of their clubs to win. They want all of their clubs to be successful. They want that global success around CFG. I get it, right? NYCFC, you see the clubs in Australia, India, whatever it may be. You see success all around the board there. Obviously, Manchester City, the biggest one.
Right.
But
absolutely,
it's upsetting because, like, to me, Acevedo was, outside of Maxi, that staple in the midfield that you were going to just expect there every single game. Acevedo, to me, in this last postseason was fantastic. I thought he played some of his best soccer in this last postseason. Apparently, some people are saying he wanted to return to Brazil. He saw that as a better opportunity to make the jump to Europe after maybe a season in Brazil. So, we loaned him down there so we could still potentially get the sell on. But again, it's CFG. We're not actually going to know how much money NYCFC is going to get in all of it. It's just a shitty situation to me because I wanted to see him in the midfield next to Keaton and Maxi in front, and let's just run it back because it's a very good starting 3 midfield. But I don't know if you have any takes on Acevedo.
Yeah, it's difficult, as you say, is because you don't know when the other shoe is going to potentially fall here, and I think it is a loss for the midfield for sure. but you combine it with some of the potential other losses, and I think it starts to become almost exponential in a certain way, because obviously you've already, Tinnerholm's gone, right? Callens, you say you guys still have the inside track. You got Sean Johnson still out there, unsigned. The rumors with, as you said, Maxi and Santi also going back to South America. It's the combination of all those guys. I think just Acevedo himself, I think, is a loss because he's such a talent, and combining there. I think Keaton Parks not having the full season last season. But you guys had an interesting 2022, right? With the coaching change, it took really a couple months to get stability again. And at the end of the season, it's like, okay, here's the Pigeons. Here they are again. Starting to play like people expected.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to think about, it's phenomenal what City Football Group does. Really phenomenal across the world and in every continent and what they're doing, right? But it hurts if that's their mindset, is we want Bahia to really promote Bahia right now and have them do really well in the Brazilian league. That's great, but is that okay at the suffering of your MLS club like that? And so I think it's difficult just to say him by himself, because you got to combine it with the other talent in the field.
And, I will say City Football Group, outside of maybe the first year or two, really, I haven't seen an NYCFC team that isn't full of depth, outside of maybe, like I said, the first year or two. Like we were last season, even through all the struggles, right? We were always considered one of the deeper teams in Major League Soccer. And I think as the roster stands right now, we're still deep, but if we lose Maxi, we lose Santi, the depth is slowly trickling away. I think especially, last season, right? Like we only made 2 incoming moves. We signed the DP center back in Thiago Martins, and we got Kevin O'Toole out of the SuperDraft, which was a steal of the SuperDraft. But, you want to see NYCFC, or at least not you, I want to see NYCFC make more moves. I want them to not just sit back on the laurels of, we have one of the deepest, best teams in the league, we don't really need to do much. I want them to continue to bolster and add, right? It's a tough situation, especially with the age of some of our players who we currently have on the roster as well. I'm looking at Maxime Chanot. It's a tough situation. I want to see players starting to come in. I like what they did in the SuperDraft tonight. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Acevedo gone, and kind of talking about some of the other guys who are knocking on or who are about to leave the door. It'll be an interesting situation. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about NYCFC, but we can move on if you want.
I just, again, back to kind of the minutes played, if you don't mind. Yeah, Acevedo had what, 20, almost 2,300 minutes played last season, right? Callens the same, 2,400 minutes. Santi Rodriguez, 2,500 minutes. Maxim Morales, 2,100 minutes. Those add up. You're starting to talk about almost close to 10,000 minutes that you're replacing. Yeah. And that's significant, right? You can have depth, right? But when you're starting to miss 10,000 starting minutes, it's significant.
Don't even add on Sean John's starting minutes.
Well, yeah, I didn't even exactly. Yeah. So let me ask you, Tom, real quick. Probability that Callens and Johnson are back.
I think with the losses of Acevedo, Maxi, and Santi, I think the probability actually goes up because it's less.
Is that hope or is that reality?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think what I'm hearing, the chances of Sean John and Kynes coming back are good, are strong. And to me, it's only kind of connecting the dots, and it makes sense that if you're not paying Maxi, who's been at the club forever, the greatest player in club history, if you ask me, if you're not paying Acevedo, who was, he was a U22 initiative guy, so he was making a decent amount of money, and you're not paying Santi, who I know he was in on loan, but still you have to cover somewhat of his salary, right? You're not paying those guys, then I think you have enough money in your CFG to go out and pay one of the best starting goalkeepers and arguably the best left center back in the league. So it's a little bit of hope. It's a little bit of connecting dots, but it's also a little bit of what I've heard around the NYCFC grapevines as well.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, again, we're, a lot of people are watching Callens, especially, he's, I agree with you totally. He is the number one free agent out there, has been. And people, we thought maybe Hedges needed to go first, and it's going to happen with Aaron Long. And then I think once that settles, then it's probably we'll find out quickly about Callens, right?
And for everyone listening to this or watching this, however you're taking in this podcast, you see the Twitter news of Alexander Kynes signing anywhere else but NYCFC. Don't even come looking for me on Twitter. I'm going to be taking the next week off. Whatever. I don't even care if we get Sean John. If we lose Kynes,
we'll send you some nice Kentucky bourbon. So that's any consolation for you, Tom.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Montreal, because if you want to talk about an interesting offseason, CF Montreal, the foot Montreal is having one, right? You lose Wilfred Nancy as your manager. He heads over to Columbus. You lose starters and Alistair. Well, you sell Alistair Johnson, Ishmael Kone, Georgi Mihailovic, Victor Wanyama, your captain's not returning to the club. A few other depth pieces as well. You know, you bring in George Campbell, who we talked about last week. And Steve, I know you have some opinions on George. I'll let you get to that. But you announced today the signing of hiring of your next manager in club history, Hernan Losada. If you guys don't remember, Losada previously managed at DC United, ended terribly. There was awful stuff coming out about him from players, staff, and everything like that. But he also previously managed at Beerschot in Belgium. I will just quickly say, in his 83 games managed in his very young managerial career, he's a very young guy. 37 wins, 13 draws, and 33 losses. Not awful. Not awful to start off a managerial career. And Montreal also announced the trade today with RSL to get RSL homegrown right back, center back, whatever you want to consider him at this point, Aaron Herrera. 141 career games between Real Salt Lake and the Monarchs. They're two-team in USL Championship and now in MLS Next Pro. 2 goals and 20 assists in his career. He also has a cap for the USMNT. So I'll just let you kind of go with Montreal, wherever you want to start with, whether it's Campbell, Losada, or Herrera. I'll let you go.
Sure. No, Montreal is a team I actually follow fairly closely in the East as well. Have established a great relationship with the Ball is Round guys, the podcast up there. Hadi is a really good friend of mine. We've established a great relationship, kind of like you and I have over the years. And so I do follow Montreal quite closely, a great city, and just it's been a good time just to interact with those guys. But Losada, I mean, I don't know if you knew this, Tom, being from the DC area. DC United was my OG MLS team, right back when they first started, when MLS started. So, I also still follow DC United fairly closely as well. And so Hernan Losada, he exited on poor, I would say, not so good. Well, we won't call it poor. We'll call it not so good, terms. Players complaining. I mean, Areola, he was not bashful, kind of saying that's one of the reasons he was happy to be gone from DC.
Areola was definitely the loudest voice. He
was the loudest voice, right? And so Losada, I think Beerschot, by the way, is one of the best, it's got to be one of the best football team names, right? Beerschot. I mean, come on.
It's a great logo. Great logo.
It's a great logo too, right? He did great. He did very well there, right? So Losada did well there. I think he's tactically very sound. I think he's actually, forward thinking tactically of how he wants to play. Obviously wants to play a high end, run to you're on the ground. And that was part of it. I think at training, he was talking about weight limits or talking about pushing the guys a little bit too hard. And so maybe his methodology didn't work well at DC United. It's interesting that he is back in MLS. I thought maybe he'd head back to Europe and have more comfort there with kind of the routine or player mentality. If there was a team that I thought he may fit okay with in MLS, it would be Montreal. I think he speaks a bit of French. So I think he's got the language thing there taken care of. I believe his style is going to fit the sporting director and where they're looking to go with Montreal. I would hope for his sake and for Montreal, the fans and the players, specifically the players, that he's learned maybe some things along the way in his first stop at MLS with DC United. Maybe how to treat some of the veterans in the league, or knowing that you're not just traveling around a small country like with Beerschot and doing day trips here or there. That in MLS there is the road toll. There is just things about the travel schedule and how things are worked. It's differently. So I just hope he has learned that lesson and maybe modifies the locker room relationship approach slightly differently with the guys in Montreal than he did in DCU. And I think it's going to be an okay fit. Losing Nancy, obviously there was a disconnect between the club front office leadership and Nancy, and that's why he's ended up just north of here in Columbus. That's going to be great for the hell. It's real derby, by the way. But it's difficult shoes to replace. Right, Nancy surprised everyone, taking over almost immediately from Thierry Henry. Right, a great guy, a great soccer guy like Henry. I mean, Nancy came in and surprised people, so he's got difficult shoes to fill. But again, if there was a club that he is going to take his second try at MLS, I think Montreal is a decent fit. He's not had anything. Well, maybe he has behind the scenes. We don't know. But the 2 trades with George Campbell that you guys talked about last week from Atlanta, I think he's a great sound fit for Montreal. And then, as you mentioned, with Real Salt Lake with Herrera, that's a fantastic fit, I think, for Montreal. They've lost so much talent with their captain Wanyama, as you mentioned, to Georgie, to Alistair, to all those guys that are moving on, which is fantastic. Is it shows players, hey, if I go to Montreal, that's not my final stop, right? I've got a great opportunity to go to Europe or someplace else. So I'm glass more than half full for Losada at Montreal.
I have to pull up one tweet real quick because I got called out on Twitter, and I don't normally do this, but I will get salty when it happens, of just the ability, in my opinion, that Montreal has to sell to Europe. I think it has been there for a very long time. I think I even said this on last week's episode. I can't find the tweet. It's okay. But I think I might have even said it last week's episode that I got called out on Twitter for saying it's only been the last 3 months that Montreal can sell to Europe. That's not true whatsoever. I feel like, and this, I don't know the timeline exactly. This might have been even before Alphonso Davies went to Bayern. Of Balou Tabla got sold to Barcelona B from Montreal. Like I understand it's Barcelona B, it's not the first team, whatever it may be, but that in its day of an MLS club selling to the Barcelona system, huge. Obviously, Montreal's ownership connection to Bologna and Serie A. Louis Binks, got sold there. Obviously, the loans back and forth. Safir Taider came from Bologna to Montreal. They sold him to Saudi Arabia, I'm pretty sure. Like, Montreal have sold to Europe, have sold to other leagues in the past. And obviously, I think most notably, the players of Mihailovic, Kone, Johnston this year are probably the biggest sales that they've had. But they've been doing it for a while. The front office knows how to bring players in, get them to produce at a high level, and then take advantage of that in the transfer market. I think, like you said, Steve, this tells players, like, if I want a shot at going to Europe or I want a shot at playing in a different league, a bigger league, whatever it may be, I do well in Montreal, I can do that. I can see Aaron Herrera in a year's time being sold to Bologna, being sold to, whatever it may be, right? Like, I can see that. I'm surprised Kamal Miller's still on this roster, to be completely honest. I think he was one of the better center backs in the league last year. Joel Waterman apparently is having rumors of Europe as well. So CF Montreal, from an overall standpoint, I trust their front office. I trust the moves that they make, because even though it may not come in the sense of trophies constantly, they do it right. They do it well. And they are pretty much, even if it's a down year here and there, they're pretty much one of the better teams consistently in Major League Soccer. And obviously, their titles come in Canadian championships. It is what it is there, but it's still a trophy at the end of the day, right? But Herrera, I love the move. Bring in a dude who's going to replace Alistair Johnston at that right wing back spot, pretty much a guy.
It's a great fit. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I think Aaron Herrera was the guy who was kind of maybe just looked over at RSL. He was obviously starting. He was obviously playing. But for whatever reason, even with RSL's success in making the playoffs, I don't think he got the notoriety or the publicity that maybe he should. And then obviously George Campbell talking about last week, I absolutely love that move. Again, he's a guy who I feel like in a year or two you could see potentially getting sold to Europe as well. Losada is the big question mark to me here. Not a name that when I signed on to Twitter in the middle of the day today, I thought I'd be hired as manager of CF Montreal. I hope he's learned from DC. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I hope he's learned his player relationship. Just like when you talk about with young players, needing to learn and grow in big game situations and whatever it may be, or dumb bonehead mistakes. Look at Gio Reyna. They need to grow. They need to learn. Losada's a young manager. Yes, he's been around the game, but he's young in leading a team. He's, like we said, he's had experience in Belgium. He's had experience with DC. You have to grow. You have to learn. And I said it with the Gio situation, and apologies about cursing, but you fuck up and you learn in life, and that's the only way you can do it. Like, to me, that's the only way. So I hope he's messed up. I hope he's learning from it, and he can take Montreal and these players into consistent relevancy, I guess, at the end of the day. Any more Montreal takes before we move on?
Yeah, who besides, in the Eastern Conference, if you're a player and you're thinking, I want to end up in Europe, besides the Union, who else are you going to go to in the Eastern Conference that has got a pretty strong pipeline and a proven track record of getting folks to Europe?
I need to pull up. Yeah, you're right. I need to pull up the conferences right now because my brain is fried. I also forget that Nashville is going back to the Eastern.
Yeah, they're back in Eastern. But yeah, I think you said it. The trust of the front office at Montreal, they've proven it. Obviously, the Acevedo connection to Bologna, as you mentioned, owning both Bologna and Montreal, the amount of deals that they've done, transactions they've done with the players. But again, I think it's these first two that we see, George Campbell and Herrera coming in. People were like, oh, when they brought in Georgie, they're like, oh, you paid too much, or Alistair, you paid too much. No, they didn't. They knew what they were doing. Right? Yeah. And so it's you kind of see it now. You look back and they go, oh, wow, now I see it. They did with Georgie, they did with Alistair, right? They brought Kamal Miller back, and then maybe that's why he's not ready to go back to Europe because he just was over there. But it's almost like, oh, here they go again. Right. And to your point, though, it's going to be, is Losada the right fit is he the cohesion that they need to actually produce in the field? And that's time will tell, right?
And we'll see, right? At the end of the day, you have to see. I think the worst part of those deals is the sell-on fee that they gave to Chicago and Nashville. They still came away with like $16.5 million, however that wants to come in, and wherever you're going to put that to the club and whatever, but it's absolutely ridiculous. All right, let's move on. Let's actually go to Losada's old team, DC United. Today, they made a pretty big splash in the transfer market, if you ask me. DC, they acquired right back Ruan from Orlando City for the second overall pick in the 2023 SuperDraft, which was today or yesterday, if you're watching this day of drop. We'll talk about the SuperDraft in a little bit, but if you guys aren't familiar with Ruan, I think kind of up there with Aaron Herrera as one of the better right backs in Major League Soccer overall. He was a U.S. Open Cup champion with Orlando last year, 160 career games, 4 career goals, and 16 career assists, many of those assists coming during his time with Orlando City. 27 years old, so you're getting a right back in his prime who's atop his position, arguably atop his position in the league that he plays in. Wayne Rooney is definitely bringing in his guys, I think, for DC United in 2023. Locking down the other wing back spot, they brought in Mohamed Giazi last week that we talked about. Pedro Santos also coming in there as well. Ruan on the right wing. You also have Andy Nahar bouncing around, who can play a little bit of right back, a little bit of right wing back if needed. I think, Wayne Rooney last year was definitely very spoke openly about the lack of talent or the lack of effort that his players gave in certain positions. I think he's starting to bring in his guys and build the roster the way he wants to, with the goalkeeper additions, with the fullback addition, obviously with the midfield additions of Ravel Morrison and Victor Paulson that we saw last year, obviously Christian Benteke coming in as well. So to me, this just seems like another piece Wayne Rooney's building into kind of his team instead of the team that Losada had built there before.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch because it's how are all these pieces going to come together as a team, right? Yeah. And that's the one thing we don't know yet is he's definitely has a method to his madness. And I thought the Ruan trade for DC was extremely smart.
It's a steal.
It's a steal. I would agree. Yeah, we were talking about this in Slack earlier, and people were like, "Yeah, but let's watch what Orlando gets." I said, "I don't really care what Orlando gets at number 2 because Ruan's a known product."
There's no, and this is no offense to any kid that was drafted tonight. There is
Right.
no kid that was drafted tonight, in my opinion, from the little bit of tape that I've seen, and watch in a year, we're going to see this dude sold to Real Madrid for $40 million.
Exactly.
There's no kid that was drafted tonight that is going to match a starting caliber 27-year-old
No.
fullback in this league that has produced week in and week out for his club team.
I mean, I would love to have Ruan here in Cincinnati. I mean, that's exactly what we need is a
I
right.
love him at New York City. Like, give him to me.
Please bring it. But I think it was a steal, and I think it's the backs, the fullbacks that he's replaced. The goal you mentioned they've traded out their goalkeepers. Right, Ochoa is now on his way to Mexico. It looks like right back at the Liga MX, and Hamid may go join Losada up in Montreal. I think Hamid was actually one of the pro Losada guys, so we'll see what Hamid does. But yeah, they brought in Tyler Miller, right?
Yep.
And they brought in. Yeah, exactly. So Bono and it's gonna be interesting to watch. So I just don't know how they're all the pieces are gonna come together, right? Because I'll just say it is I still don't know if Wayne Rooney is going to be the manager, as good a manager as or nearly as good a manager as he was a player. That's still to me to be told.
I can agree with that, right? Like, I know people when he was brought in, people were talking about his managing situation in the championship, and I know his team had the point reduction for whatever happened before Rooney took over. Like, it was impressive, but it wasn't this overall like amazing feat that I felt like he couldn't have overcome. Right? Again, impressive. I'll give him that credit, but it wasn't something that I'm like, that's going to reproduce well in Major League Soccer. Yes, he knows the league. Yes, he knows some of the talent, and obviously he's bringing in some of his guys from Europe as well. But I think the benefit of a Wayne Rooney as a manager is guys want to play for him. And I think you definitely see that with like a Benteke signing, if you ask me. But we'll see. I'm not overly sold. I still think, similar to what I kind of said with Toronto earlier on in this episode, is there's still a lot of holes to me. If he's gonna play that 4-2-3-1, I don't think Ravel Morrison is that guy who's going to play in front of a Paulson and a Chris Durkin. I'm not a big Ravel Morrison guy, just period, but I don't think he's that 10 that's going to play in front of that. Maybe he would prefer his boy Lucho sitting there. I don't know, but it's interesting. I still think you need center back help. I still think you need winger help, especially with whatever's going to happen with Taxi Fountas. I don't know if he's going to be on the roster.
I was going to ask you, what's the Taxi situation?
Yeah,
we don't know, right?
Exactly. I don't know if he's going to be suspended, whatever about that, right? Obviously, they have Christian Fletcher, who was a very talented academy signing that they brought in. Like, there's a lot of question marks still around this team. Obviously, there's a lot of offseason left, or I guess not a lot of offseason, but in Major League Soccer, that's pretty normal. So it's a lot of offseason left. So we'll see some moves, and we'll see what DC United and Wayne Rooney continue to bring in. But definitely, I think a team that could rebound from wooden spoon to fighting for a playoff spot so far in 2023, if you just look at it on paper. But we'll see. Anything else about DC before we get to your team?
No, I think that's the goal for DC, is to obviously get off the bottom there. They didn't bring in Rooney to game wooden spoons, right? They want to be fighting for the playoffs, and so we'll see what happens. The taxi situation, as we've talked about, that is going to be key. What happens? Is he suspended? Is he coming back? Is it just what they did by keeping him in Greece, right? Did that let it just the embers kind of just just
die down?
Die down. Exactly. We'll see what happens there, but. A couple of interesting ads. Again, it's just how does the glue come together for those guys?
Exactly. Sometimes on paper it looks better than what it does on the field too. So the last major move that I think we should talk about, that obviously I want to get your take on, and I'll just announce it, and I'm going to let you go wild with it. FC Cincinnati. They also made a major transfer splash today. They signed a 20-year-old Ecuadorian international. I'm going to call him a box-to-box guy because that's what he described as.
He's a box-to-box. Yeah.
Opening interview. Marco Angulo from Independiente de Bahia. He's a Copa Sudamericana champion. like I said, Ecuadorian international, one cap, but it's still, he's 20 years old. He has plenty long of a international career in front of him. 45 career games for the kid. To me, I'll just quickly say, I don't know if he's a starter right away. I think he kind of plays behind Junior Moreno for a little bit, if you ask me. But maybe once he gets adjusted, I think this kid could be a star. And I think you pair him with Obi and Lucho in front of him. I think this could be a fun midfield to watch.
Yeah, we're excited about looking at any of these midfielders that end with Lucho and Angulo and Nuovo and all those guys. So I agree, he may not be a starter out of the gate, but I think this is starting to see Pat Noonan and Chris Albright moving off of the 3-4-1-2, which really was a modified approach last season because the talent they had on the roster. They would rather be that diamond attacking 4-4-2, what we like to call a 4-1-2-1-2.
Mm-hmm.
So he will be a prime part of that, I think, transition over time. Whether I don't necessarily see that happening day one in 2023, but they're starting to modify the roster a bit. They want to have the versatility to still go with the 3-back, 3-4-1-2, or to go into the diamond. I think Angulo is a big part of that. Yeah, the one cap he got, Tom, was interesting. It was right before World Cup. And so he was over there in Qatar with the Ecuadorian national team. And that's when he got his first cap. And he was the next guy. People would say maybe he was the first, the last cut on the team. But no, he was the reserve guy that if somebody got hurt, they were going to add him to the roster. Unfortunately, I don't know if you've heard the news. He came back from being over in the Middle East, he got back home, got in a car accident, Yeah. And there was some drinking involved, and there's we don't know the full story, and I really don't want to go into the full story.
Yeah.
But people wondered here locally because Tom Bogert, Tommy Scoops, wrote this about 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then it went quiet, right? And then he came back home, and the accident occurred. And so we last couple of weeks, we all been kind of going, does this mean the deal is off? What's going on? And so I think we were pretty happy today to hear that the signing is official.
Mm-hmm.
Great young talent, the kind of what you would want from a U22 coming into the roster. We put, on the U22 side, Gus Vicia, we sent over to Colorado on a good deal for us. We'll talk about the other Colorado deal for us today. But, we've loaned out. We really only had one U22 left, right, with Barreal, with what we call Alvarito Barreal. And so this is a great opportunity for Chris Albright to bring in a young midfielder like Angulo, and a good opportunity for them to look at transitioning to that the diamond midfield. He has got great hair. If you have not seen any highlights of Marco Angulo, you're going to want to look at him. We're hoping we're going to have some great hair nights at TQL this year.
I mean, you could pull out like the old, the whole Lenhart out in San Jose hair night, right? The wig night. I mean, I think that'd be
the wig night. We've got to have an Angulo wig night.
Wait until he bags his first few goals or assists in a game or something like that, and then you start making wig night a thing. I think that's the play. I love it. But honestly, I'm not going to talk too much more about it because I think you have done more research and know more than me at this point, and the listener just got way more of an education with you speaking about it than me. So let's dive into quickly. I'm going to kind of read off some of the other moves that have happened in Major League Soccer over the past week. If there's any that you want to talk about, just tell me to shut up and start talking. So that's totally fine. Freddie Montero re-signing to Seattle. Club's all-time, appearance leader coming back, probably backing up Rui Diaz. Great move there. Vancouver selling Canadian international Derek Cornelius. I'm pretty sure he sold him to Belgium, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. He was on loan to Greece in the Greek league last season, so obviously impressed enough over in Europe to get a shot in a bigger league.
I think they sold him to Sweden, to Malmo.
Sweden, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sweden, yes. Yeah. Still, Sweden, bigger league than the Greek league. I'll firmly say that.
Yeah.
St. Louis City SC, they signed Sam Aiden. I'm not sure how you say his name. Sorry, but Seattle homegrown kid. He was on loan with San Antonio last year. He was their starting striker, winning in the USL Championship. Young kid going to an expansion team. I mean, it's a story as old as time have we seen in Major League Soccer. We saw James Pantamis re-signed to Montreal, Marcelo Silva re-signed to RSL, Victor Vasquez moved back to Toronto FC after he got retired.
Especially kind of Vasquez to go back home like that.
Yeah, he actually DM'd me when I posted my Instagram post about him. Very cool. He seemed very happy to go back home to Toronto.
Yeah, home. He was there for so long though.
Exactly, right. But no, he seemed very appreciative and excited to go back home. A few more re-signings: Jonathan Klinsmann back to the Galaxy, Joe Bendick back to the Philadelphia Union, and maybe this one you'll have something to say about it. Calvin Harris traded to the Colorado Rapids. I'm a big Calvin Harris guy. I have been since he got drafted. I like that he was in a pro system before going to college, and then he got drafted. Like, I like the whole story around him. He's still young. I think he could produce into something big. I just don't know why Colorado signs 15 wingers every single offseason. That's my biggest confusion on them.
Yeah, Calvin Harris, the previous group brought here in Cincinnati, the previous group with Jared Nykamp brought him in, Generation Adidas selection a couple of years ago, a winger. And it just really, with the new team in town with Albright and Noonan, was kind of just an odd piece, leftover puzzle piece, right? So, what's interesting of this move is when we heard it happen, we podcasted last night for You Ain't Lying. We did a SuperDraft preview, and part of that SuperDraft preview, we talked about Calvin Harris and the spot he was taking in the supplemental roster in that 21 through 24. That, if we were looking at another generation Adidas player today in the SuperDraft, we really needed to kind of move Calvin away, because we're not going to move Roman Salentano, of course, our other generation Adidas. So we pontificated last night about Calvin Harris moving today, and then it happened. So we were kind of, patting ourselves on the back, but he just wasn't going to fit here any longer, being more of a winger, and what just wasn't going to kind of be modified or fit that wing back approach like we've done with Barreal. We had good luck last year with our transfer of Gus Viacia over to Colorado, and he didn't do all that much for Colorado. So I think I've been talking with Joseph Samuelson, who follows the Rapids pretty closely, and so we've been going back and forth in some tweets, and he's like, "Oh, you guys did it to us again." But what's interesting about Calvin Harris is we moved him, a Generation Adidas player, to Colorado. Then we did pick up a Generation Adidas player in the draft today, and we'll talk about that. But we all thought, because he went back to England. England's his home. He's been all over, Hong Kong, New Zealand, as you said, professional systems, played in Australia a bit, went to college here. I mean, the guy's got well-traveled guy, right? So, but he went home to England back in June of last year to get his green card. Well, he came back after like 3-4 weeks gone, and he had an injury before he left. So it was about a 6-week hiatus that he was, not really with the team. We all assumed that he had his green card when he returned. It came out today by one of the Rapids people that they're still working on that green card. Oh. So he's an international spot as of right now, and they're going to have to get that hopefully converted before they write the first game of the season, or he's going to count as international for him.
I mean, I like to think if it was in the works, hopefully they're getting it done relatively soon for Rapids fans. And just for me, I'm not a Rapids fan, but I'll speak about it from a point of view. I've heard constantly the Rapids wanted to get younger, and they especially wanted to get younger up front. Obviously bringing in Kevin Cabral a few weeks ago, and now Calvin Harris. To me, potentially, I know he's a natural winger. I know he can play a little bit of striker. To me, he kind of fits in that backup striker role to Diego Rubio. But the Rapids depth chart that I have my depth charts for every team because I'm an MLS nerd. My Rapids depth chart is maybe the most difficult one that I have to create right now, is because I don't know how the hell these pieces fit together, to be completely honest. So,
he's got the pace, right? He's got a wicked shot. It's just having the time to put it all together a bit.
Exactly.
Right? So we weren't surprised that he was going to get moved because I don't know if you heard or saw when we had in September when we had our friendly, he scored in the friendly. And he looked over at the bench, kind of like, see? And so it was kind of made news here because it's kind of like, oh, wow, he was kind of showing up the coaching staff a little bit. And so we're not too surprised that we moved him today.
I mean, he honestly just seems extra on the roster, to be completely honest. Like, the like I know they tried him a little bit at that kind of like left wing back spot that Barry Ells kind of played. I know they tried him up front, but it's like you have Vasquez, Brenner, Sergio Santos, even Dominique Baji and Ordonez, that the young kid you guys have. He's not a great defender, so I don't think he would kind of fit in at that Barry Ells spot, where Barry Ells just thrived as this left wing back kind of guy. So he did just seem extra to the roster in where he didn't really fit in. So it makes sense. Get as much as you can for a young guy, and you have a sell-on fee. So if he blows it up at Colorado and you sell him over to Europe, then get whatever you're going to get from him. You know what I mean?
I think it's one of those things, change the scenery, right? Is sometimes good for, and I think this is going to be the case for him. And I really hope he fits well there, and they give him the opportunity to show what he's got, because he is quite talented. Now putting it together.
No, I mean, I fully agree with you. Let's move on to the final three pieces of news. Obviously, I'm going to finish things up with the Super Draft, but I want to just kind of give two quick shout outs. First of all, Thiago Almada, right? I know he played like 7 minutes. I know he was.
I don't care if he played a minute. He's got a World Cup trophy, man.
I agree. No, I fully agree with that. I just know the people out there are going to say he was an injury add-on. He played like 7 minutes, whatever the exact number was. But Thiago Almada becomes the first active MLS player to win a World Cup. So that is another thing that Atlanta United fans will have and probably never stop talking about. But congratulations to Thiago Almada, to Argentina, to Messi. I'm a Messi lover, and I haven't got to say it on the podcast. So absolutely awesome to see him with his World Cup title. Now officially the GOAT in my book. We don't have to talk about it.
Confirmed 1,000%. Yeah.
The other piece of news that I quickly want to mention on this podcast, Seattle Sounders, obviously CCL champions last year, in an outstanding accomplishment that I think still isn't talked about enough in Major League Soccer. But they learned their path at the 2023 FIFA Club World Cup. I can't speak.
It's a tough one. Yeah, it is.
I'm sorry, everyone, but they learned their path. The Club World Cup is going to be held in Morocco, which is cool. We obviously saw Morocco's blow up at the World Cup on an international stage, and it's going to be exciting to celebrate the soccer in that country even more at the Club World Cup. But Seattle will join in the second round pretty much with the rest of the kind of national Champions League winners around the globe. But they are going to be facing the winners of the AFC Champions League, the CAF Champions League, and there is that first round is a game between the OFC Champions League and the Moroccan National League winner of last year. So that whoever the winner of that game is going to be facing Seattle, and then again the Asian and the African Champions League winners as well. So it should be fun. It's going to be exciting to see what an MLS team can kind of do on a global stage like that at a club level. Not many other teams in the league that I'd want to represent us than Seattle. So definitely excited to see.
This is the last time it'll be this format. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because Tino came out and he's expanded everything, right? I'm sure Salt Bay is going to be there for that championship too. But it's going to be what now, a 32-team Club World Cup going forward?
32-team tournament. I'm sure we'll see more MLS teams involved in it at that point then, which kind of makes it like salty. So I am glad, not salty with Salt Bay, I didn't make that reference, but I am kind of glad Seattle is getting in this format at least one last time to represent it in the.
I agree. It's a great representative for MLS to finally win the CONCACAF Champions League and to be over there in Morocco in early February. Well done for the Sounders. Great organization. Yeah, right? They deserve it.
Way to tack on another like 10 games to your schedule too. So that's always fun.
They should be ready for preseason, or they won't be. One of the two, right?
Exactly. Let's finish things up in this episode covering the 2023 MLS SuperDraft. And doing 241 episodes of this podcast, I never know how to cover the SuperDraft well, because there's not many people in U.S. soccer that I can safely feel confident in, and this is including myself in that bucket, of knowing the college game, of knowing how these college players are going to transition to the pros, and really having an understanding of positions that they play and everything like that, right? Like, you can tell me this kid's an 8 in college, but he's going to play a 10 in Major League Soccer, but he's a 6. And like, it's the most confusing thing. Again, there's not many people who I would consider experts. There's a reason why Major League Soccer brings in Devin Kerr every single year, because Devin Kerr absolutely kills it. I love Devin, friend of the pod, and he does a great job with it. But let's just kind of, for what we know, for what we can kind of decipher a little bit, and obviously we can talk about an NYCFC and FC Cincinnati perspective as well, the super draft a little bit. I'm just going to read off the first 5 picks because from what I do know, I did see and watch a lot of tape of these first 5 guys. So first overall, Charlotte FC, they trade with Seattle. They traded with St. Louis to get that number 1 overall spot. I think it was $450,000 in general allocation money, which is a lot for a number 1, for a lot for any type of draft pick, if you ask me. But the number 1 overall draft pick, they signed a kid right out of their backyard from Clemson, Hamdi Diop, a left-footed center back. My guy, our guy, Vaughn Pullman, he was very excited about the pick. Apparently, the scouting team has a lot of confidence in Diop. Orlando City, who this was the trade for Ruan that they got for this number 2 overall pick. They acquired forward winger Shakir Muhammad from Duke. All trades here in the first round too, which is wild. Colorado Rapids, they
I think Orlando's hoping that Shaq is going to be the next DK, right? Is that,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
he seems like it. He arguably, from everything I was reading and from what I was watching, arguably was the best player in college soccer last year. So I mean, his stats prove it, his awards prove it. If you watch the tape, kid's very good at soccer. So I'm hoping we can see more super draft picks just blow up and go to Europe in a year or two. Number 3 overall, Colorado Rapids. They got this in their trade with Toronto FC for Mark Anthony Kay and Ralph Prizzo and everything like that. They got center back Moise Bombito. 4th overall, New England. They acquired the trade from San Jose for $250 in allocation money. They got midfielder winger Joshua Bolma I like a lot. Very young winger. He's very talented, and I feel like he could kind of fit in with the experienced attacking core that New England has. So I really liked him. Again, I'm not sitting here guaranteeing it. He'll probably just eat up minutes on Revs 2 in 2023, but I like the move a lot. And all of these guys so far are Generation Adidas picks as well. I think there was 11 Generation Adidas guys, which is awesome to see, which means college soccer is producing high-level talent.
And Boma was one of the 2 Terps that were taken in the first round. You guys at NYC got the second Terp.
Maryland produces good pros, at least at an MLS level. So that's like, to me, it's like, if in the NFL draft, if Alabama has a guy getting drafted in the first round, they're good. If Maryland has a guy getting drafted in the MLS SuperDraft, they're good, and they're going to be a good pro.
I'm a Terp for my my master's. My MBA is from Maryland. So
there you go.
I'm happy anytime a Terp makes it. I'm pretty happy about it.
Go Terrapins. Hey, Boomer Esiason. That's all.
Boomer, exactly. He's Cincinnati connection there too, So,
hey, I went to the same high school as him. I've met him a few times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's my Cincinnati connection as Boomer Esiason. Number 5 overall, Vancouver. They acquired JC Ngando from their trade with Houston for this pick. $225,000 in general allocation money. Ngando, his stats are ridiculous. I think he either had a goal or an assist in 31 of his 38 collegiate games. This dude produces, he gets on the score sheet somewhere or another pretty much in every single game that he plays. Number 6, Orlando City. They got this in their trade from Chicago for Chris Mueller. They got forward Duncan McGuire from Creighton. Again, he was the lone Generation Adidas non-pick, so he was not a Generation Adidas player there. Number 7, RSL acquiring forward Elijah Paul from their trade with Atlanta for $175,000 in general allocation money. He played his ball at Washington, Generation Adidas pick. Number 8 overall.
He was a homegrown with Real at one time too.
He was. And you know what? A lot of talking there. Sorry. You know what? I think I saw someone post this online, the last time that Garth Lagerwey traded away a first round super draft pick for $175,000 in game, very specific. It turned out to be Christian Roldan. So maybe the pick turns out good for Atlanta in this trade. I don't know. A lot going on with that pick there. Yeah. Number 8, SKC. They did not acquire this pick through a trade. I think it was the only top 10 pick that wasn't traded away. They got forward Steven Afrifa from FIU. Number 9, St. Louis. This was their trade with Seattle, $175,000 going to Seattle, but they got midfielder Owen O'Malley, who played at Creighton, another generation Adidas guy. And then I'll finish up listing off the super draft picks, but I'll just go top 10. Defender Daniel Mooney got drafted to San Jose. This was their trade that they completed with New England for $250,000 in general allocation money. I'm surprised the super draft pick is going for $250,000 in general allocation money. That seems like a lot to me.
Yeah, the GAM trades today, as you mentioned, there's so many trades in this first round. 9 of the 10 involved trades. It's part of that GAM proliferation, right? And I think it's that's what they wanted to do. They wanted GAM to increase level activity into trades like this, and so the league's getting what they want. Obviously, they're increasing GAM each year when you look at the roster budgets. So the league's probably smiling to see all that level of trade and the funny money going back and forth between the teams. Right? Yeah,
the Garber Bucks just going back.
Garber Bucks, exactly. Yeah.
So let's quickly talk about Cincinnati. You guys got a generation Adidas signing of your own. I'm pretty sure center back Joey Akpuano. Okay, thank you. Sorry, apologies, Joey. I will get your name down by the season's beginning. I promise you that. But generation Adidas guy. You guys also grabbed a goalkeeper, Hunter Morse from Western Michigan. He also played in MLS Next, which is always nice to see those ties there, as well as a defender in London, Acevedo from the Air Force Academy, which I always feel like we see a lot of like Air Force military guys get drafted. I always feel like that's always an interesting take because they always have to complete their service and then
it's a long play for sure. Right?
Exactly. But so I guess if you want to start with just an overall Cincinnati just feeling from the draft.
Yeah, well, we need center backs, and so we were happy to look at Joey. I'm going to have a hard time. Right? Dropping to 22nd. Some had him in the top 6, in fact, in some of the mock drafts. So strong kid, comes local. He's been up at Bowling Green State University. Kind of just outside of Toledo. 21st birthday today. How about that for his 21st birthday?
Happy birthday, Joey.
So we're pretty happy overall being at 22nd and not moving up to have a generation of Adidas talent. I think he's got a higher ceiling than even Ian Murphy, right? Ian Murphy we took last year as the 14th pick in the super draft, and Ian played a solid rookie year for us. So
I like Ian Murphy a lot.
Yeah. Well, Joey's got higher ceiling. Then he's 2-footed, strong kid. He's great in the air. I think he's going to help some of our set pieces and aerial defense. To your earlier point, you never know how some of these guys are going to translate coming out of college into the pro game. But we're pretty happy with that pick with Joey.
I mean, I will definitely say that again, just repeat the point of you never know. Jasper Lawfulson, who turned into a starter for RSL last year, was a 3rd-round draft pick. Like people can skip picks in the 3rd round. Like you never know. But sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. The rest of Cincinnati's draft.
No, absolutely not. And so earlier this last weekend, we actually had Paul Rogers, who's our director of goalkeeping here, came over from Houston Dynamo last offseason. We're extremely happy with Paul and the new leadership as the goalkeeper. But they held a clinic here locally where they had, I think it was 24 goalkeepers come in from around the country, including, some of these guys that were going to be in the draft today. So Hunter Morse was one of these guys that was in. You nailed it. He's got MLS Next Pro experience with the famed Michigan Wolves Club up in Michigan. So they got a bird's eye view on Hunter over this last week, so I'm not surprised by that. We did bring back 4 goalkeepers from 2022 to 2023. So people are like, well, why did you guys take another goalkeeper in the super draft? Well, reports came out yesterday that Kenny Vermeer, right, who came over from LA a couple of years ago, we believe his option may have been auto-triggered, and that's why he had a 2023 contract. We believe that a mutual termination or something of that nature announcement is going to be forthcoming, because he's back in the Netherlands right now training and looking for a new spot. So actually picking up Hunter Morse in the second round makes a lot of sense.
And you know what?
He could be our fourth goalkeeper now.
Fourth goalkeeper. He's a guy that can play for you in Cincinnati too. I can't say anything negative about Evan Loro. I love Evan. I've interviewed him on the podcast 2-3 times. I chat with him a little bit. Congratulations on your beautiful child as well, Evan. He's a good dude. He was the best USL Championship USL Championship goalkeeper, I think, when he was playing down for Tampa Bay.
Just a couple years ago, not long ago.
Exactly. Like he had an unfortunate injury that kind of led him to being out of soccer for a few months, for a long stretch. But I love your goalkeeping core. If Evan Loro is your third center back, you have to have some solid players in front of him. So you know what? If Hunter Morse can learn from a top of the line USL Championship goalkeeper, Alec Khan, an MLS veteran, and then Roman Celentano, a dude who was in his spot last year, who was an absolute standout and arguably the best rookie in MLS last year. I mean, who else is he better going to learn from, if you ask me?
Yeah, we agree. We're solid goalkeeper. And then you're right with the Air Force Academy, the last pick. That's a long play with his academy, requirements. People had him in the first round, but I don't think that was realistic because of the academy type stuff and not being able to come on board right away. So another good opportunity. We're trying to grow our talent at the 2 team. So I think it's a smart selection. You can't get too excited about third round picks.
No, exactly. And I mean, New York City had a pretty interesting third round pick, but I'll go into New York City's 3 draft picks really quickly because I have to give some love to the citizens, to the pigeons, whatever you want to nickname them. 26th pick, they got Malcolm Johnston. If the last name Johnston sounds familiar, it's because he is the younger brother of now former CF Montreal, current Canadian men's national team defender, Alistair Johnston, who just got sold to Celtic from Montreal. What I like about this kid, obviously, New York City with the later picks, we're not getting Generation Adidas talent. I was hoping maybe one slipped, but you're not going to get it. But he's a senior. He's 6 foot. He's a midfielder that I think is going to come in and potentially fight for a backup kind of 10 creative role to me. He was a 2-time captain. To me, that speaks more words than any type of award he could have gotten, because that just means you got the respect and you got the trust from your coaches and from your teammates. He was a 4-year starter. He had a combined 27 goals plus assists in his 61 career games at Maryland. That's not numbers that are going to blow you off the page, but he played almost 4,800 minutes in college as well. This kid played, this kid knows. And again, Maryland produces pretty good.
When you're the captain in College Park, you're a pretty good.
You're a pretty good player. You're a pretty good player. So that was the first round draft pick that they got, the 26th pick. Their 26th pick, overall 55 in the second round, was Bradulio Rodriguez. I probably butchered the hell out of that, and I apologize, but he's a 6'1" striker. He's Portuguese, so he is going to eat up an international roster spot if we end up signing him. He's coming from a smaller college, right? He's coming from Franklin Pierce, but during his time there, he scored 31 goals and had 25 assists in 45 games. I don't care where you're playing, when your goals plus assists outreaches your games played by that many, you're an impressive soccer player. So we need strikers. We need some depth at that position. So I do hope he has a pretty solid camp, and obviously we can keep him on the roster as a rookie. I know it's going to eat up an international roster spot, but we need the talent. I like the pick overall. And then the third round pick, you said we can't get too excited about third round picks. I'm pretty excited about a third round pick. Our overall number 66 pick in the draft, Matthew Myers. He is a striker. He is a forward from Rutgers. He did play in MLS Next underneath the Philadelphia Union. So Philadelphia Union know how to spot talent pretty well, so I am excited that we got one, at least that was in the Philadelphia Union system a little bit. Again, it's a third round draft pick. How excited, how much hope are you going to put into that? Not a lot, but during his 1 year at Rutgers, he had 13 goals and 6 assists in 18 games. Again, not too shabby. So if we're going to give a long shot to some of these guys like a Rodriguez, like a Myers, and later round picks, Hope they work out, and I hope we can have a little bit of depth and some young talent on the team. That's all I really have to say. I don't know if any
having the next pro experience is good. I mean, that gives you a little bit of basis to know what he's coming over with.
Exactly. Okay, Steve, it's been a pleasure. I'll give you, obviously, I want you to promote the podcast. I want you to promote your social media, all that stuff right now, again, because you totally deserve it.
Well, I appreciate that, Tom. Again, thanks for having me on. You can find me on Twitter at SBUCK67, so at Spuck67. U8 Lion, our Twitter handle is at Zoohausa513. 513 is our area code here in Cincinnati, or check our podcast out, U8 Lion, Lion.
And I have to say, even if you're not a FC Cincinnati fan, I listen to the podcast. I mean, I listen to too many podcasts, but I listen to the podcast. I enjoy it. I do feel like you guys give a good experience of, like, you get to know you guys more throughout the podcast. Like, you get to know your opinions, your jokes, like all that stuff. So I really do enjoy, like, getting to know you guys through the podcast. Then obviously the social media interaction, and you guys feel like such like a close family in it all. So I appreciate it. I love the podcast. Definitely, guys, go check out You Ain't Lying. Make sure you go follow Steve on Twitter. And Steve, we'll have you back on soon, but I appreciate it.
Sounds great, Tom. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.